Tonight, as fears over recession have many Americans worried, the White House looks to stimulate the economy. What actions the administration may take. Plus, more talk of red flag laws, what they are and how they could help prevent future mass shootings. And the latest on the push to put America back on the moon. All this and more tonight on Faith Nation.
The White House looks for new ways to stimulate the economy. Welcome to Faith Nation. I'm John Jessup.
And I'm Jenna Browder. As warnings over possible recession echo throughout the country, President Trump is looking at steps the administration can take to help boost it.
That's right. The move comes as President Trump insists the country is not in financial trouble. Ben Kennedy joins us from the White House with tonight's top story. Ben?
Well, John, Jenna, the White House is in early stage talks about a cut in the payroll tax to counter an economic slowdown. Today, President Trump said he's been thinking about payroll taxes for a long time. The payroll tax was last cut in 2011 and then again in 2012 by about 2%. And to put things into perspective, a person who made $50,000 back then would get an extra $83 a month back. 2020 presidential hopefuls blamed Trump's economic policies for the latest turbulence on Wall Street, but the commander-in-chief pushed back on that claim today that the economy is very strong, and he blames the Federal Reserve for increasing interest rates for any dip in growth. Take a listen.
We could be really greatly helped if the Fed would do its job and do a substantial rate cut. Also, they were doing quantitative tightening, very bad to do. They should do easing, actual easing, no tightening, or at a minimum, they should be doing nothing about that. But they have to do a rate cut. The other thing is, yeah, we're looking at various tax reductions, but I'm looking at that all the time anyway, tax reductions. That's one of the reasons we're in such a strong economic position.
Now, Trump adds the payroll tax cut is designed to boost American spending, but Adam Michel, a senior policy analyst with the Heritage Foundation, doesn't think it's the right move. Well, Adam, the White House is discussing ideas to boost a slowing economy. Is cutting payroll taxes the answer?
I don't think it's the answer. It's one of the least effective ways of boosting the economy. And the administration should focus on things they can control, like reducing tariffs or eliminating them completely.
What could be the impact? Could Social Security take a hit?
Yeah, well, if we're reducing taxes, broad-based taxes that almost everyone pays, it would certainly have a big impact on the budget.
What would you recommend to the president to boost confidence in the economy?
I think the president can reverse his position on trade. We should be expanding trade with the rest of the world, reducing tariffs. And then I think he's been doing a lot of really good things. He can start selling the tax cuts that we got in 2017, saying that we need to make sure those are permanent for the economy in the future.
Right now, millions of Americans pay a 6.2% payroll tax on their earnings. Aside from Social Security, which you heard him talk about, a tax cut would also add to the federal deficit. The White House Office of Management Budget predicts the deficit will exceed $1 trillion for this fiscal year alone. John, Jenna?
White House correspondent Ben Kennedy, thank you.
Well, still with continuing fears about the economy and a possible recession, stocks on Wall Street saw losses today. At the close of the day, the Dow was down 170 points and the S&P 500 ended down about 23 points.
On the issue of gun control tonight, President Trump is calling for new action. But it appears he appears to be moving his support from expanded background checks to red flag laws. Amber Strong has a look at what they would do and the potential fight to get a bill through Congress.
With the president's apparent back and forth on expanding background checks, so-called red flag laws may be the only measure capable of reaching his desk. And he isn't alone in his support. According to a new poll from NPR, 77% of Americans support red flag laws when initiated by the person's family. That includes 70% of Republicans. Red flag laws, or extreme risk protection orders, allow police or family members to go to court requesting guns be temporarily taken away from people seen as a threat to themselves or others. 16 states, including the District of Columbia, already have some form of the law on the books.
People have to remember, however, that there is a mental illness problem. It's not the gun that pulls the trigger. It's the person holding the gun.
While Jim Granados of the American Psychological Association supports the laws, he adds mental health and violent behavior aren't necessarily connected.
The issue of gun violence is complex. We know that the best predictor of violence is past violence. And so putting mental illness as a cause of the problem is inaccurate and simplistic.
Regardless, critics maintain the laws violate both the Second Amendment and the right to due process, such as this tweet from Congressman Jim Jordan. The problem with red flag laws is you're guilty until proven innocent. Now, Senators Richard Blumenthal and Lindsey Graham have bills encouraging states to adopt red flag laws. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer says red flag laws alone are a cop-out, setting up a dicey battle when Congress returns here to Washington in September. Amber Strong, CBN News, Washington.
Thank you, Amber. Well, to campaign 2020, Julian Castro has become the 10th candidate to qualify for the next Democratic primary debate. As of today, the former Secretary of Housing and Urban Development has officially met the polling and donor requirements set by the Democratic National Committee. Castro will join the 9 other candidates you see right here on your screen. Now that the 10 candidates have officially qualified, the debate stage is full. However, if any other 2020 hopeful can meet the polling and donor minimums, the September debate will be broken up into 2 nights.
And here now to talk more 2020 is Julia Manchester with The Hill. Julia, good to see you.
Thank you for having me.
Julian Castro, he is the latest one to make the debate stage. Is there anyone else who you think can make the cut at this point?
Yeah, so Julian Castro was kind of the last one that people were really looking at. Some people potentially looking at Steve Bullock because he had a very good debate performance last debate. However, he's kind of failed to meet that threshold as of yet. But I think Julian Castro was the last one that people were looking at. However, I think Andrew Yang, he's already qualified, but he is someone who has really surprised us with the fact that he's was unknown before he entered the race and has been able to make it this far and qualified for the September debates.
Julia, Elizabeth Warren just released her criminal justice plan today. It seems like another day, another plan from another candidate. How much do these plans really matter to voters?
Right. I think these plans, for Elizabeth Warren, her plan in particular does matter because that's her shtick, is very much offering these very in detail plans on very important issues that matter to progressives like criminal justice. But, I think these plans help these candidates really differentiate from each other, and it gives them kind of a platform to maybe pick at each other's plans and doing a line of attack or so there. But it is an opportunity for them to sell themselves to voters when it comes to policy.
It does keep them in the headlines.
Yes.
It seems like a lot of these candidates and Democrats in general are talking about how it's largely about electability and who can beat Donald Trump. Joe Biden, he released this new video today. Let's go ahead and listen to that, and then we'll talk about it.
We know in our bones this election is different. The stakes are higher, the threat more serious. We have to beat Donald Trump. Now, Joe Biden is running for president with a plan for America's future. To build on Obamacare, not scrap it. To make a record investment in America's schools. To lead the world on climate. To rebuild our alliances. Most of all, he'll restore the soul of the nation.
Julia, a lot of people think Joe Biden is the most electable.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the argument that his campaign is making right now. Even his wife, Jill Biden, made that speech just last night, essentially saying you may not like Joe on health care, but he is someone who can beat Donald Trump. And the reason why they're making that argument is because he has the ability to appeal to that blue collar base that President Trump flipped from blue to red in 2016. However, Bernie Sanders also has a piece of that base, and he's also proved that he can kind of appeal to that base as well. However, Joe Biden is saying, look, I'm the most well-known candidate. I'm the most experienced, which, may be good for some people, but I think the progressives in the party are definitely pushing this narrative that there needs to be new blood.
Julia, only about a half a minute left, but you just wrote a piece about Texas and Democrats really excited about making gains there in 2020, even more so than in 2018, and especially excited about Senator Cornyn's seat.
Right, absolutely. So they're really taking aim at Senator Cornyn's seat after Beto O'Rourke came within less than 3 percentage points of getting Senator Cruz's Senate seat. The only issue with them getting Senator Cornyn's seat is the fact that Senator Cornyn tends to be more popular than Senator Cruz. Right. He has a huge war chest of money, and this is a very large primary, so we don't know how bruised the eventual winner will come out of that primary being.
All right, Julia Manchester, thank you. Good to have you.
Yes, well, turning overseas, there's growing concern tonight ISIS is regaining some control in Syria and Iraq. Late last year, President Trump announced the terror group had been defeated in Syria, but with some 18,000 fighters still in the area, some locations have seen a resurgence of ISIS power. On CBS this morning, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo acknowledged the issue, but downplayed its significance.
There's certainly places where ISIS is more powerful today than they were 3 or 4 years ago. But the caliphate is gone, and their capacity to conduct external attacks has been made much more difficult. We've taken down significant risk. Not all of it, but a significant amount. And we're very pleased with the work that we've done.
A recent Pentagon report says the Trump administration's troop withdrawal has helped to embolden ISIS in some parts of Syria and Iraq.
Tonight, Russia is accusing the United States of stoking the fire between the two countries. The Pentagon tested a cruise missile Sunday that would have been banned under the weapons treaty the U.S. just withdrew from. CBN News national security correspondent Eric Phillips has the details.
Officials here at the Pentagon say Sunday's missile test was planned and even announced in advance. But experts I spoke to say with it happening on the heels of the Russian missile explosion, it still underscores the tension between the two countries. This is the video seen around the world of Sunday's missile test off the coast of California. The Pentagon testing a weapon that would have been banned under the INF treaty between the U.S. and Russia that both sides abandoned earlier this month. Andrew Gable with the Foundation for Defense of Democracies says the Russians began violating the agreement more than a decade ago.
Russia hasn't just been conducting a few tests that are in violation. They don't have a few missiles stacked in some warehouse in Siberia. They have operationally deployed missiles. They have battalions today with banned systems that could potentially target U.S. service members.
According to Reuters, Russian officials say the test was intentionally meant to escalate military tensions. Russia also said it would not be pulled into a costly arms race or deploy any new missiles unless the U.S. does so first, even though a Russian missile test led to a fatal explosion just days ago. Gable says the U.S. desire to step away from the treaty was not driven by Russia alone.
Because everyone focuses on Europe and Russia, as they should, but there is a China angle that's driving, I think, U.S. policy to some extent as well.
Gable says China never joined the INF treaty and proceeded to develop its own nuclear program, while the U.S. voluntarily handcuffed itself for decades by following the agreement.
We were already at least a generation behind the Russians, and we need to scramble to keep pace because our adversaries are not standing still.
Gable says officials here at the Pentagon realize the need to ramp up the missile program. The question is, will they get the necessary resources to do so? Meanwhile, while the U.S. is getting its financial and political house in order, the clock is ticking. At the Pentagon, Eric Phillips, CBN News.
Coming up, more investigations into leading online companies, what it could mean for the future of big tech.
Wouldn't it be great if you could just hop on a plane and fly to a third world country and hand out food and medicine to the needy? And wouldn't it be great if some of those people came to know Jesus as their Savior because of your help? And wouldn't it be great if you could help out people like this all around the world every day? Wouldn't that make you feel great? And what if you could do all of this without having to leave your home or write monthly checks? Well, you can. Partner with CBN and you can help spread the gospel all around the world and make it a better place. And when you sign up for Pledge Express, your contribution will be deducted from your bank account every month automatically. It's a safe and simple way to make a difference. Plus, wouldn't it be great to get life-changing teachings every month from Pat and Gordon? When you sign up for Pledge Express, you'll save time and money, and you won't just sit around and watch the world go by. You'll help change it for the glory of God. Now, wouldn't that be great?
When you care, souls are set free. When you give, lives are made new. When you share, eternal life begins. When we all come together to love, miracles happen.
Cracking down on big tech. States are now joining the federal government in new investigations into antitrust violations by leading online companies. The Wall Street Journal reporting up to 20 state attorney generals are considering the move. The probes would look into if companies like Google, Facebook, Amazon, and Apple are monopolizing the tech marketplace. They would also explore privacy censorship and all of those concerns. Speaking at a tech conference today, the Assistant Attorney General for the Justice Department's antitrust said DOJ would coordinate with investigating states. And Chris Lewis is the president and CEO of Public Knowledge. Chris, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
With states now getting involved, how will these investigations look different?
Well, what's great about this is that we have multiple venues now investigating these companies, and what that offers is the opportunity to shed more light on the details of how this marketplace works. So many consumers in the United States use these services, but each service is different, offers a slightly different service to the public. And so to really understand how they work within the marketplace is important to see if there are any anti-competitive harms here.
Chris, when people hear the word monopoly, some might think about the board game before its business connotations. Privacy breaches, on the other hand, they might know a thing or two about. Why should the average American be concerned about this, or these investigations?
Well, these investigations can be very broad. You know, the Department of Justice's review did not name one company. They're looking at the entire marketplace. You can also look at the review going on in the House Antitrust Subcommittee in the House of Representatives, where they are doing a series of hearings on the different impacts of dominant tech companies. So that can range from concerns around privacy and whether users have control over how their data is used and how it's collected, or how it's shared with third parties. Or there can be concerns about whether consumers have real choices in the marketplace when these dominant platforms might have the ability to foreclose competitors from growing and challenging them in the marketplace. Right.
The chief of the Federal Trade has said he is willing to break up big tech companies. Chris, is this the right move? Does this need to happen?
You know, I think this is why we need these reviews and this analysis. There are plenty of concerns have been raised, but in order to actually break up a tech company, there has to be a real antitrust analysis done by these experts.
Chris, you see these federal investigations. You see the warning from the FTC last month with Facebook being hit with billions of dollars in privacy fines and breaches. Are these moves doing anything to push the needle, to push these big techs into shaping up?
You know, I think with Facebook, we're seeing that it has caused Facebook to reconsider some of their internal practices, but that other than the large fine, we haven't seen any industry-wide reforms, and that's what we really would like to see. You know, Facebook is just one company, and there's a lot of dominant platforms out there that have the ability to hurt the marketplace. And so we'd love to see out of this review some sort of reform that reaches across the industry, protects consumers with real rules, and potentially even an agency with oversight over this sector so that you have experts actually analyzing and watching their impact over time.
All right, Chris Lewis, great to have you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. To the moon and beyond, the latest plans to put Americans on Mars when we come back.
I am Regent's first ROTC graduate student.
When you give, smiles grow bigger. When you care, homes are happier. When you comfort, the hurt goes away. When we all come together to love, miracles happen.
Okay, John, well, NASA says America is one step closer to returning to the moon and even closer to rocketing to Mars.
That's right. Today, the U.S. Space Council met for its 6th meeting since 2017 when President Trump reestablished the cabinet-level group with the mission of returning the nation's attention back to the skies. Abigail Robertson joins us now with a story. Abigail?
Well, that's right. Nearly a decade since NASA retired the space shuttle, the vice president emphasized today that American will be the key word when rockets and astronauts head into space by the end of this year.
3, 2, 1, ignition.
The successful launch of the Orion test spacecraft this summer is propelling NASA one step closer to a moon landing and possibly beyond.
We choose to go to the moon.
President John F. Kennedy's historic push for space exploration came well before scientists were sure it was possible.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Now, 50 years after Neil Armstrong first set foot on the moon, the U.S. plans to return.
The next man and the first woman on the moon will be American astronauts.
NASA hopes the 5-year timeline will also put Mars within reach.
Our objective will be to establish a permanent presence on the lunar surface, and from there we will develop the capabilities to journey to the red planet of Mars.
NASA Chief Jim Bridenstine says the moon will be a proving ground and potential launch pad.
It's the best place for us to live and work on another world so that we can ultimately go to Mars.
If all goes as planned, the first human mission to Mars could come as soon as 2033.
People say, why are you accelerating the mission to the moon? Well, because it accelerates our mission to Mars.
The next leap into space will require working with commercial partners. This summer, Blue Origin tested engines for its own lunar lander. And earlier this year, SpaceX successfully docked its automated Crew Dragon capsule at the International Space Station. Assembling in front of the retired space shuttle responsible for more space flights than any other spacecraft, Vice President Pence said Tuesday that American spaceflight is back.
Working with our industry leaders, before the year is out, the United States will once again send American astronauts into space on American rockets from American soil.
The revitalization of the space program comes as the White House says adversaries like Russia and China are transforming space into war-fighting domain. To combat that, the vice president said today that the new U.S. Space Command is set to launch under General J. Raymond next week. John, Jenna?
Well, still ahead, how art restoration is helping revive war-ravaged Afghanistan.
When I came to Regent University, it's like the world opened up. I felt like I needed to advance my career and go back to school. Regent was a perfect fit for me. The Regent professors are world class. You are equipped. The focus of the faculty is on each individual student, whether it's online or in person. You become a part of Regent's family. You carry with you not just the content and the knowledge, but the confidence to understand that we can be significant in the world.
Regent University. Follow your path.
I am Regent's first ROTC graduate student.
Young people, millennials, are flocking to church.
It's not an exaggeration to say that we love to meet them and that we love to know their stories.
Well, as the United States and Taliban close in on a peace deal to end the 18-year-long war in Afghanistan, news signs tonight that the history of the country is being restored.
That's right. Like a cultural puzzle, the National Museum of Afghanistan is putting together shattered pieces of artwork destroyed by Taliban forces. After seizing power, the Taliban showed up at the museum in 2001. They demanded staff turn over all art they deemed to be against Islam, destroying all of it. More than 2,500 irreplaceable pieces from places like ancient Greece, Persia, and China were shattered. Now, as peace in the region seems close, work has begun to reconstruct the artwork.
We have achieved a lot during the 18 years. We have to consider it. If you see the museum in this situation, this is the result of this 18 years. It was not like this during the Taliban period.
And the museum says it could take a decade before they are able to put together all of the pieces. One interesting thing, they actually hid some of this artwork in the presidential palace.
That's pretty amazing. It's nice to see these pieces of the puzzle coming back together. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Have a good night.